Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week in hospitality marketing, show number 399. And yes, my venue behind me is a little different. I am in another country, the Netherlands, Holland for some, uh, in a wonderful Hyatt place in a town called Hofdorp, which is just outside of the airport Schiphol in the Netherlands. Uh, Not to not be on time, as always, for us to brag that we always do our live show every week, no matter the circumstance. For those that have followed us for the 9 years that we've been doing this, the broadcasts have come from Australia, from China, from the Netherlands before, Canada, um, gosh, Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. I'm trying to think of other countries we may have been out of during the course of the 9 years, but a diversity. And for that reason, no exception to this show. Although I apologize in advance for the background noise if my sound canceling earbuds are not doing its job effectively. Um, we will be changing venues as the weeks go on, because we'll be here for a couple of months. Uh, I have board meetings and client meetings, but we're over here for family as well. So a lot of reasons why we're here, but it'll be a duration for us to be here. That being said, today's conversational topic, or topic for conversation, is relatively sensitive to the events that transpired to get us here, and that was the planning and process of the means to make travel. Now, for us, what was unique this time is that we brought our small dog, Edison. You've heard him on the show before. You've seen him a couple of times. And for us to make this journey for as long as we are, we needed to bring him along. We had no intentions of leaving him behind for the entire time that we would have been gone. So that came certain logistics as to learning and educating ourselves as to what would be necessary for him to have a safe trip for such a duration. Because with international travel, there is very few exceptions about allowing a pet in the cabin with you. 99% of the time, unless it's a genuine registered service animal, the pets are not allowed in the cabin. We found this out in a process of discovery as we did our research for travel, as most people do for all of their travel, and found out that airlines have different policies, different tolerances, and along with that, different guidelines as to what is required to travel. Now, I use this as an example of our discussion because our topic is, strangely enough, because of what we're dealing with. The devil is in the details. Content that is accurate and up to date. Now, I'm not saying that I had problems or that we had issues, but we had problems and issues because what was written or the information to be discovered was, in fact, not consistent, was not accurate, and was not really well known. Uh, I have to give praise to the fact that consumer generated content was the savior of most of our curiosities and questions and concerns. They brought to light the issues that they had when they traveled, the nuances of the size of the crate, the, the, the screws to be used, the fact they had to be metal, not plastic, how the crate had to be a certain lockability, and where zip ties went, and what were the best zip ties, and on and on and on. None of that was directly on the sites that needed to be on, the airline sites. We discovered this because they had issues when they brought their animal, for being told that they can't do this or can't do that. And the thing with traveling with pets is if they don't go, you don't go. So being not caught at an airport is an important thing, especially for international flights. It's always challenging to get the next flight or to have the next space or what have you. As with any flight, domestic included. Now, obviously, domestic flights have a higher tolerance for some things, and when it comes to details of travel, they're different. But little things as to if you're not an international traveler or consistent international traveler, you know that you would know that the carry-on baggage sizes and weight restrictions are much more ardently enforced than in domestic travel. We've all been on domestic travel where the gate attendant doesn't like you or was just been told that they got to check bags because they look too big and they make you shove it into that little metal box. And of course, it's over, your case is a little far larger than it should be, or whatever have you. On international travel, that is like a standard thing. You have to make sure your uh, carry-on luggage fits and that it's not overweight. The reason why I'm bringing up these things is these details have to be discovered. This information has to be available. Now, when it comes to the legalities of that, the airlines have a good sense of making sure that information is on there, especially for referral. Do they enforce it always? No. I mean, if you have a business class ticket or first class ticket compared to economy ticket, the enforcement sometimes is different. So too is the weight limits. You're actually allowed more weight per carrier and size of check-in bag and so forth. But these are all details that you discover. And the reason why I'm not droning on about this, maybe I am, is the value proposition of your content for your guests. Our guests go through a stage of 4 processes with us, and that is the discovery process, the education process. All of that is pre-arrival. The arrival process, the duration of their stay with you, and the exiting and post-departure communication. It's a standard funnel of communication we've always talked about. We focus so much not only on this show, but in general, that the content that we produce, the content that is important to produce, is all about substantiating advertising, confirming what the advertisement is driving them to. Basically, the filling in of the details that are related to the purpose of the advertising. And that doesn't diminish in its value, and it doesn't diminish in the importance of making that a priority. But I'd like to augment that statement, and that is the content that is informative, the content that is supportive, and the content that is useful should equally be prioritized. Nothing is worse than being told uh, that you have certain amenities in the room, but that information is no longer up to date. And you find out that it's not the case, that they're only in certain rooms and your room isn't one of them, or that isn't what's in the picture. If you take a picture, this is your amenities. You have to rely on that. You look at the list of what's supposed to be in the hotel. You see the pictures that they provide of the hotel rooms, and you are connecting the dots that what they say they have. If it's not in the picture, then it should be in the room, like a hairdryer in the closet or something. Uh, I say this because with international travel, we're so used to in the United States of brand standards, familiarization. Independent hotels emulate that standardization in the sense that there's certain things that rooms have in perpetuity. Um, there has been testings where certain brands don't have ironing boards because they're not used that often, or the demographics of the people using the room don't require ironing boards, or therefore no irons. Business travelers, travel hotels tend to have them for the convenience of business travelers to be looking their best. Um, these details, if not kept up to date on your website, can be deceiving and disappointing. If they are kept up to date, then it benefits the reaffirmation of why the property was chosen. If your staff is not kept up to date as to the changes of what your property holds, like you updated your website, you updated your content, your images, and so forth, but your team wasn't been made aware of the new updates to room types or amenities or what have you, it's just as bad as we often complain about where front desk and team members don't know about specials and promotions that you're there participating in, some reward or amenity that you're supposed to receive for having booked a certain code. These details in the communication process are just as critically important as the facilitation of the accuracy of the content that your website has. Now, again, not to drone over current circumstances of being in a foreign country in a new hotel, or new for us hotel, is not having the familiarization of what will be here, the familiarization of how to get here, the familiarization of what to do while you're here, the familiarization of what's considered norm or not norm, what is or is not included, how you do not do certain things. You are, as a traveler, at the mercy of what data has been given to you, the content that has been shared to you. For that reason, if it is inaccurate and creates problems, it reflects immediately upon the source of the data, which is the hotel. If there was an exclusion to the content, that they had shuttles, but they don't tell you that the shuttle only runs twice a day, or that you have to pay for the shuttle when they basically didn't say that they required you to pay for the shuttle, or that the shuttle is shared with other hotels and the schedule is not imminent, but on a cycle of, and you have to make a reservation. How often have you been in a hotel where they do have shuttle service, but they didn't share with you the fact that in order to get on the shuttles, that it's a good idea, well, actually not good, it's required that you make a reservation. And for high demand periods like early morning departures or evening departures, whatever the cycle of demand usually is for arrivals and departures for the airport that it's next to, that it is in your best interest to make that reservation well in advance of its need so that you don't find out regrettably that there's no room on the shuttle when you need it the most to make it to the airport. And now you're looking for alternative transportation where you had planned on using the transportation you thought was provided. Just to be clear, none of these things have happened here to where I'm at. These are the things that I began thinking through of having run airport hotels, been responsible for airport hotels. I took for granted. Now, I was at a time that when I was running airport hotels that there was more traditional methods of communication. The internet wasn't the primary source of education. A lot of it was call scripts as to sharing information, brochures, those types of communications or group bookings where the information was provided to the group booking agent to be shared with those participating in the group agency and so forth. Those means of communication were pretty static because once printing 5,000, 10,000 brochures, you best make sure it's right. With us on the internet and for what we can do, we can, at the flip of a switch, change content to be as accurate as possible, expand content that don't require whether or not you have to print a whole nother page or another section of a booklet or anything like this. We can expand our content dramatically. And we've talked a lot of times about adding content that is useful and valuable to your guests, knowing what the events are. Flip2 just released their Discovery program that includes event-driven information to show you the relevancy of what you should consider on the dates that you're considering going to a particular property. That's been a holy grail of content connectivity forever. I did it manually once for a hotel in Montreal where manually I was going and looking at the calendar, manually going and making sure that an email was sent to anybody that had dates of stays that the events were running. However, well appreciated and adored, it just wasn't worthy to maintain because of its time consumption and amount of work to maintain those things. Now we have technologies that can do this. Being able to expand your content accurately and to ensure that the information is accurate that you keep is a critical component of your guest consumer satisfaction relationships, especially if there's language variations. Okay, fortunately, everyone speaks English wonderfully well in the Netherlands. Very few people have issues for it, so it's not as if I'm struggling. Now, that doesn't mean that the signs all look correct and that I understand everything around me. On the contrary, guidelines and rules and conditions change within countries, signs change, and general conversations aren't always in the language they understand, for me being English. That unsettling unfamiliarity only makes it more important that the content that I do have access to is accurate, understandable, and flexible. Thinking of languages, if you find that you have a growing number of international travelers, which our international travel is happening in different ways, differently than it was pre-COVID, that's for sure, then having that diversity of language opportunity, of content to be in a language that is better understood, is incredibly helpful. Now, there are some amazing tools that can help you. Google Translate is wonderful. There's actually several. Bing has Translate. And you can hold up with your phone camera to a menu or to something that's written in another language, and it'll literally change what you're looking at into the language that you've asked to change it to, in my case, English. It's very handy and helpful. But again, not everything, unless augmented reality is going to be great when this comes around. Being able to look around and everything gets translated to your own viewership. It's still, you do it for prioritization. I don't understand it, but I need to read that, so let me look at this. A lot of signs in, out, fire, danger, things like this, you should understand pretty well, or at least be familiar with. The idea that we should have language, the idea that we should have a more comfortable way of acquiring the data that's necessary for our stays is a huge value proposition that we must maintain. I can honestly say nothing is worse, and we found this in our discoveries of looking for where we're going to stay and what we're going to be doing and so forth, that the information is out of date, that the last update was way long ago, that the information is inaccurate or incomplete, because when you are untethered and you're in uncertain or less than confident situations of being in foreign countries, being in travel-wise to a place you haven't been before, knowing what's customary or not customary, having that additional information provided to you so that you understand better what you need to know whether or not that's what you want, that's where you want to stay, but also, how do I get to such and such place? How do I get to such and such place? I remember to this day a trip to Italy, and we were going to see the Statue of David. And this goes pre-internet to a degree. It was very early internet, early 20s, 2001, thereabouts. Internet was there, but it certainly didn't have the depth and usability that we have now. So a lot of the things we relied on were travel agent information, the Rick Steves things of the world that we'd print out and so forth. And we go to see the Statue of David, and we're staying in this very long line that we were told was the entrance to where you get to see the Statue of David. And we're standing there, and the line's barely moving. And literally, about 2 hours into this, I'm thinking from what we moved to how far we have to go, we're never going to see the statue before the end of the day. But I do keep noticing that there are people that aggregate off to the side of the street, and then they're brought and led into what I can assume to be another entrance into the Statue of David. So I asked my wife to stay in the line for a little bit, and I caught one of the groups when they were clustering together, and there was somebody that spoke English. They said, "Hey, just curious, are you going to see Statue of David?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I said, "How are you guys getting in when we're in the line?" "Oh, you never want to do that. You want to go around the corner over here and get your ticket from a priority ticket place, and then they bring a tour in, which is basically opening the door for you to let you in, and you can stay and look as long as you want," which is the slow down to the line I was standing in, because until the groups thinned out, there was not a way to bring more people in. So I was literally following what I understood the way to do this, but really, if I had understood or had better information, I would have known to do it a better way. As we always said before in the show, finding out that you missed the biggest ball of twine next door because you weren't told is incredibly disappointing, and you often blame the resources that you relied upon. In most cases, it's the hotel or the accommodations that you're staying in that they didn't share this with you. That is where it's critically important to have useful and up-to-date and accurate information that is available. And it doesn't have to be for just the purpose of being able to index that content and show relevance to it. It really is a useful condition of people engaging with the website, that they can see all the information they need to know. So in this resort that I'm at now, the hotel I'm at right now, the fact that there are 2 bus stops walking, like 2-minute walk from either side of the hotel, but they go in 2 completely different directions that we're going to be going at one point. This one goes back to the airport. That one goes to the downtown. By the same token, now we have shuttles that will go to the airport from here. There's a schedule in the lobby. Nice little pull-back banner. It doesn't recommend reservations, but it does suggest on a tent stand by the front desk that during peak demands of mornings and early afternoons, that you would consider making a reservation so that you can fit on the shuttle, or that they know they need a second shuttle to accommodate the extra requirements. That awareness of data around you, and not just relying that the front desk person is going to know everything that you need to know or share everything that they think you should share. A lot of times by the time you arrive at the hotel, you're tired, you're more interested in getting up to the room to get out of the cattle feeling that you have for when you're traveling, flying wise or whatever. You don't ask the right questions you should. You don't take the time to understand the way you need to. Knowing when breakfast is available, knowing how to get breakfast when available, knowing what to expect for breakfast, what features there are for breakfast. With it being an international audience that comes to this hotel, the diversity of the breakfast is phenomenal. The food is phenomenal. But by the same token, there's food that you don't immediately recognize. Like, what do I do with that? And it's because there's a contingency of different ethnicities that come into the hotel, and they cater to the breakfast offerings that is included. It's not all packages. So you have to show verification of that your reservation included it. This goes backwards in time, that if you're looking at making reservations and it says breakfast is included, ensure that breakfast is included with what you're getting. Because what will happen is we make simple assumptions in our mind. Oh, breakfast is included. Then you go and you see rates, but you don't see within the rates the smaller print or the definitions of the offer that this is excluding breakfast. Again, none of this happened to us, but I do see it happening. I do see people and have heard people where they thought, well, I thought breakfast was included, not on the rate according to the room charge that you have. And they went up to the front desk, and front desk said, yes, you picked a room rate, or you used a room rate that does not include our breakfast. You can include breakfast at this certain price if that's what you want. These are the things that get frustrating, because if you're that guest, you're like, the website said breakfast included. Yes, but not for all rates. And you didn't see that in your rate, didn't understand that was a conditional change of why you're getting a different rate price. And lo and behold, there you have it. Or the fact that you don't understand the size of the room, the amenities in the room, the type of bed in the room, or the variable types of bed that can be in your room based on the rate that you're getting. Being clear and concise with the data that you have on your site about what's being purchased, and I think in very many ways, identifying the variances. This room will include a smaller queen size or twin bed compared to other. This does not have a mini fridge, or this room has a Murphy bed. Again, nothing I've experienced with my travels so far, but being granular about understanding what you're truly purchasing and having that information identified clearly on your websites allow for the guests to truly have the expectation and deliverability of that expectation without the negative surprises of discovering that things weren't as portrayed or as understood. Of course, the resort can point out, well, we have that on the website, you didn't see it. And they're absolutely right. It doesn't change the disappointment of the guest by blaming them that they didn't see it. And nor should the resort coalesce, unless they feel like they should or could, to modify something like include the breakfast or give them a different room, give them a room upgrade or whatever it was like that. That's where guest service really makes it a home run. If the guest realized that it was their error, that they didn't see the variances, and the hotel accommodates them anyway, you've solidified a solid relationship. It doesn't mean I'm coming back to this particular hotel anytime soon, but it does mean that I might do a show about talking about how a hotel recovered a disappointment on my part. Again, none of this has happened here, but it's nice to know that these things do. That word of mouth, the shareability, we know all about social media, gets out into the realm where people say, oh, if I'm actually going to the Netherlands and I have to stay around by the airport over there, I remember Lauren telling me that this was a really great Hyatt place that was really good. The rooms were good, clean, breakfast was phenomenal, whatever. And that makes the difference between looking at this as being one of many hotels presented in a search result to that's the hotel that Lauren was talking about. That difference maker is the value of doing those types of things, the value of having your content correct, the value of having accuracy to your content. So the reason why I bring all this up is as these travels for me for the next couple of months in Europe come through, I'll begin to share more and more just the relevancy of our discussions from our live show, the practical engagement that happens with hotels. It's so easy not working at hotels anymore. Even though you're empathetic and you have wonderful fond memories and so forth, time glazes all detail. And you forget the nuances of flipping a banquet room or serving 400 people for breakfast smoothly in a buffet environment, checking out 50% of your inventory in less than 45 minutes, shuttling buses that you did not anticipate you needed as many buses, but given the heavy load of people leaving at the same time for the same reason, you coordinating and having coordinated with other hotels the ability to share shuttles so that no one suffers. All of these things are based down to the property level data life. And we talk about websites, we talk about marketing strategies and retargetings and buzzy things like AI and the usage of AI. There's a real intangible, real and tangible, not just real tangible, but real and tangible need for practical, realistic, common sense, day in the world, day in the life of hotel operations. Light bulbs that get missed. It's still a quirky thing. I can walk into any lobby and I can tell you how many light bulbs are out within probably 15 seconds. It's a thing from when I used to be a GM. In my hotel, I was always walking around and always noticing lights because that was a part of being a GM. Paper on the floor, I still pick up paper on the floor. It's not even my hotel, and I pick up paper off the floor. I'll still align chairs around a table that has nothing to do with me servicing a table from my old waiter days. The things don't leave your life, but the way of life leaves your day. And so it's going to be fun for the next few months to travel through all the places we're going to go, see and do the things that are applicable to our industry, live them firsthand for a period of time, and to really appreciate again the things that make our industry so unique. So that was the inspiration of my topic today of the devil's in the details, content that is accurate and up to date, is because it's amazing how, as I started this with the fact that we're bringing our dog with us, Edison, and the details that we learned and the details we had to discover, and then the reality of our experience. We basically felt that if we didn't follow every T crossed and I dotted, that we would be possibly in jeopardy of not being able to bring him while we're at the airport. And to go to a terminal and or to the check-in and the person to not even know the details of what they were supposed to look for, and we had to educate them what we had prepared for, and then from that to be brought over for it's great to be checked in, and we wanted to get the verification that we are according to the paperwork said that we should be asking for, and them not even requiring the things that the paperwork said that we would be required to do. And we're saying, well, no, we really do want to put these substances. Don't worry about it. It's like, no, we do have nothing about wanting to let the door accidentally open at all for our dog. We're zip tying this because your policy says we needed it and we're going to do it. The uniqueness of the reality versus what was being dialogued in the content was different. And that doesn't mean that on a return trip, that it will be completely different again and that they are going to hold us to exactly the letter of what we expect. The idea that the closer you produce your daily running of your hotel or resort to the content that you say is your daily hotel resort, room types, amenities, services, expectations of what the service levels are, the things around you and so forth, the better the experience and the more affirmational and word of mouth the value proposition that becomes. So with that, again, the devil's in the details, content that is accurate and up to date. Things like FAQs, not being too salesy, accuracy and updates on things that are timely and transitory, changes in things that are happening from short release because we have that capability. All those things are critically important. So with that, my name is Lon Gregg. I thank you for the privilege of your time. Thank you for this being our last show of March of 2023. Next week, April 7th, we roll into show number 400. So the reason why we can say we do it every week, no matter where we are, is because we do it every week, no matter where we are. So greetings from the Netherlands. I will say hi to you next week, probably from the Netherlands again as well, from our current travel plans. And until show number 400 next week on April 7th, I wish you a very happy day and great weekend. Bye now.